way before Valentine's Day, we're talking about love, particularly love and employment this afternoon on Kababayan LA. Earlier, for those of you that are newly engaged, we gave you tips courtesy of Tracy from Apollo Research Institute on what to do, you know, newly engaged and career and all that. But now, Tracy, as we've discussed also in the show before, so many people also unfortunately get divorced around this time of the year. And so what to do when that situation faces you. 50% of first marriages end in divorce. 67% of second marriages end in divorce. 74% of third end in divorce. My gosh, the numbers don't look very good.
No, and it is a part of, unfortunately, our lives today. And people who are working and have careers have to realize that if they can have an impact there, and we also need to plan on that side as well.
So how can divorce affect your career in the short term?
Short term, most people, especially if you don't know, feel panic. And that has come up a lot in our interviews, that if you have panic, then you can't focus at work. You get upset at work, you're going through a lot of trauma, you may feel tired, run down, and you may be agitated with your colleagues.
Would you recommend that you tell people that you're going through a divorce so they understand where you're coming from? Would you encourage them to go to the HR perhaps and talk to the HR person?
So it depends on your scenario. If you are working with a lot of people, if you're managing people, if you have team workers and co-workers, I think it's a good idea. Most people advise us to let people know. It can be your trusted co-workers, but if you're falling apart at work, you want people to understand that there is a private side and there's a personal side to what's happening. You'll find that as many women had interviews with us said that people will rally and give you support.
Right.
Number one, they'll encourage you probably to take some time off.
Yes.
To help get your situation in order.
Would you say they should?
I would.
A vacation, use your vacation leave, your vacation days?
That's right. I think, you know, number one, people have to absorb the shock. 2, make a plan. 3, reassess your coworkers and your trusted advisors and your family. You know, how are you going to move ahead in this whole new aspect of life?
We're talking about divorce and employment today on the show. Very important to talk about this because Tracy gave us this number as well. Filipino-American divorce rate is at 5.2%. So this is higher than other Asians, but not as high as the general population. Wow.
Correct. In the U.S., it's just under 10%, so it's much lower. And there could be a number of factors which I don't know, but it was a point that was worth bringing.
Yes, and there's one point here also that's very interesting. When a couple divorces after the age of 40, it's usually the women who initiate it.
So a lot of that has to do with age and what were their expectations of the woman and the man when they decided to get married. And many women decide at midlife that they'd like to move into career, but if that wasn't the original scenario that was agreed upon, that creates some tension. A lot of people may have a role reversal of where one person has stayed home, now wants to go back to work, or one person has been working and lost their job and puts pressure on the family. So there's a lot of scenarios that come into play.
So it seems that employment plays a big part in a couple's marriage.
Well, employment plays a big part in our life. About a third of your life is dedicated to working. So it's important that you realize that your work is going to be impacted as well as your home life by your careers.
And speaking of impacts, you know, what about long-term impacts of divorce to your career?
Again, the scenario planning is something that I would recommend. Think about it. If both are working, your life has been in one home, let's say with children. Now you're going to be probably operating out of 2 homes. What kind of support systems? What will change in your careers? If you are the one parent who's been working full-time and the other one has been at home, well, your life is going to change because you may have children with you now half-time. In the same scenario, if you were the person at home full-time, now you need to get a job, right? Because you're only going to have perhaps your children half-time, or if you don't have children, what's your income and support?
Yeah, what are your tips out there? I know of some women, you know, in a marriage, they stay home and take care of the children. And then after they get divorced, now they're forced to get back into the workforce. What do they do? Where do they start?
That's right. Well, one, you have to assess your skills. It's the same as doing career and job search.
Right.
But assess your skills, and I would reflect on what was the last thing that you did very, very well. Go out and work with your friends, get your resume set up, and go out and pursue, and fill in the gaps for the skills that maybe that you let go while you were raising a family.
How willing are employers out there to hire, you know, a person who's divorced?
Very well. I mean, it's just a part of life, so that's part of it. But I think the question really is, if you've been out of work for a while and now you're re-engaging, what are your options? And there are organizations out there specifically targeted at women who actually reinvent themselves and come back into the workforce. And help them reassess how they're going to fit in.
And you can reinvent yourself. This is actually one of the most exciting parts of your life, right? Because then you're reinventing yourself, discovering things about yourself that you may not have otherwise discovered. Thank you so much for those tips, and more power to you. Tracy can be traced at that web address, and they also have more information about employment at that web address. And back here on the show, we'll talk about the Grammys. Don't go away.